Hello, and welcome to another episode of Daily Wisdom Words podcast. I am your co-host, Rini O'Day.
Hey everyone, I'm your co-host, Neil Chiretti, and we want to give you a very warm welcome to our latest episode.
Join us every Saturday at 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time as we talk to guests who have stories, advice, and life hacks, all of which take you one step closer to the feeling of hope.
It's an absolute pleasure to have the author of the best-selling book, Becoming Toxic Person Proof, and toxic relationship expert, Sarah K. Ramsey. Hi, Sarah. Welcome to our show.
Hello. Hi, Sarah. Welcome.
Thank you.
So, where are you? And
I'm in
what
Tennessee.
Part of the country? You're in where?
I'm in Tennessee right now. Though I'm
in
Florida.
Oh, bless your heart. No.
Do you want me to turn up the country thing a bit?
Yeah, exactly. I love it. I wish I could do it. I'm just born in Plano, California. I feel like the Beverly Hillbillies. I swear. I feel like Donna in the Beverly Hillbillies. Well, this is a conversation that has needed to be talked about for a long time. So we are absolutely over the moon you are here. And let's get into it.
Excited? Yeah.
I know one of the things that you've mentioned before in a couple of interviews I heard of yours, that what springboarded you into this topic of toxic people and toxic relationships was, I think you heard about a girl being killed by her boyfriend, I believe. So can you go in a little bit about that? What was that incident, and what was about that incident that sparked this passion in you to bring this awareness of toxic relationships?
So I my father went to a high school where back in the day, and then I ended up doing some work as a media specialist there. And there was
when dinosaurs walked the world. He walked from the world, yeah.
There was a young lady named Emma Walker who ended up in a relationship with a football player who's a couple years older than her. And there were a lot of concerns about the relationship, but when she kept trying to break up with him, he actually shot her in her bed. So she was asleep in her bed. He got a gun, I think from his grandfather, shot her. Her parents woke up to her dead in her bed. And so I often wear purple. I love the purple background. Emma's favorite color.
Thank you. It's my favorite color in the world. Yeah. Yeah.
Also the color of domestic violence awareness, which I always joke. And I'm like, domestic violence awareness. Did we really need to have a conversation that you shouldn't hit your loved ones? Are we that far gone that we have to have a conversation about domestic violence awareness? And I think about it as being like stage 4 cancer. Within the toxic relationship spectrum, what happened to Emma was horrible. But that's stage 4. He didn't shoot her the first date. He didn't, there were so many levels that happened before what happened with Emma, so many levels that happened before you get to domestic violence. And I'm really trying to broaden the conversation. So we start to see, just like with cancer, we want to see precancerous cells. We want to have cancer prevention, not just awareness that cancer exists.
Right.
Oh, we already know that. Already know that, and I mean, there's so many questions, but the first one I really want to get into is, this is a very open-ended question, but if anybody can answer it, it's you, because I just see brainiac right there, is what defines a toxic relationship? I mean, you know what I'm talking about, right?
Absolutely. And if you look on a police website, they're going to define a toxic relationship as someone who maybe intimidates you, they make you feel afraid, they call you names, they tear you down, they hide money from you, they lie, there's also the term. So that's what would be on the police website. Then the next stage, you're going to hear about gaslighting, narcissism. Those are typically within the toxic relationship conversation. I'm going to try to make it even more simple and say it's a relationship where both parties are not playing by the same set of rules.
I get that.
And one person's obviously getting a much better end of the deal.
Mm-hmm.
And the other person's job is to follow the rules that the other person gets to break or not deal with. So that's the easiest way I can define it. And I really am trying to take it back into those precancerous cells stages rather than waiting when you're looking at the police website. It's like, well, he hasn't hit me yet, so maybe it's not.
It's
really
not just about hitting.
Yeah.
Verbal is just as bad.
Yeah, and that was going to be like my next question is, you talked about in the first answer, like about, having enough conversations exist about abusive relationships and domestic violence. But when the uninformed person, they hear the word toxic, right? The automatic stereotypical image that they conjure up is probably bruises and black eyes, right? That's what toxic. Oh, okay, he's hitting you, just like you just talked about. So what are like some of the key differences about toxic relationship versus abusive? And is it just behavioral, verbal abuse? Where does that line come to where this is toxic, now it's turned downright abusive?
I love that question and have never been asked it. So well done, Neil. No, I love that question. Yeah. When an abusive relationship is one, I'm going to say it makes your head scramble. Okay. So if there's been gaslighting or whatnot, your head is in a scramble. That could be verbal abuse or physical abuse. And you're just like, I can't figure out what I'm doing wrong. I can't figure out this. A toxic relationship, you could see like, this person's acting like a jerk and they're still toxic. Right. So toxic is a larger umbrella. Abuse kind of fits in one of the categories of toxic, because sometimes abuse is just really hard to define. And it's actually a word I stray away from, not because I'm afraid of it, but because many people who are abused don't identify that they're being abused. They're like, oh, well, I'm not bruised or hit, so I'm not being abused. And it's like, but well, there was one situation where they were said, well, I'm not going to give you money for the kids' doctor's visits unless you give me like sexual favors.
Right.
That's abuse, right? I mean, that's a control, that's abuse. Yeah. But is that going to show up on a police list?
Report? Right.
No.
Exactly.
No.
Exactly.
It's so tricky.
Well, this is Kona. Kona is our mascot.
Hi, Kona.
Say hi, Kona. Say hi. She's just like wondering what's going on. That was a really good explanation because, like they may not be hitting you, but bartering, oh, no. Especially over your children. That is a no. But now, does a person always know they're toxic? Or are toxic people out there that don't even realize that what they're doing? I mean, you are taught things in your life. Do you think it's coming from that place of being taught?
I think as we learn more about the brain, we're going to see that there is more of a genetic component to toxic relationships, personality disorders. I believe that. It seems very politically incorrect to say.
No, I agree.
Where do we go from there? It's tricky.
I agree because our genetics carry so much from our past. Like 6 generations ago, we have stuff in us that, But anyway, go on. Please finish it.
I believe that completely too. But kind of the way I like to explain it is I'm a musician. Okay. I play piano. I was a college piano major.
Oh, okay.
So,
Wow.
Yeah. So, but I was born musical Okay, I was just born genetically musical, but I became a musician because I practiced piano for so many hours. Okay, so I was born with a bent toward being musical, but then I practiced. So nature, nurture, right? Now I'm a musician. Okay, so I do feel like some people are born more selfish, less empathetic, more prone to manipulation, more prone to some of those things. Then whatever they practice in their life can help develop them one way or another. Does that make sense?
And what I don't get in this day and age is how people don't understand violence begets violence. If you hit your children, they will grow up to be hitters. We have to break that cycle. Right?
I'm doing a whole parenting interview recently about good parenting, and I haven't had anyone mention spanking as part of the good parenting plan. That's an interesting the conversations I've had recently.
No.
Yeah. Well, and within that conversation of, I absolutely think most toxic people know what they are doing because they know they are getting a better end of the deal. They know they're getting your way more than you are getting your way. And they are very attached to keeping that dynamic going.
Okay.
They may not be abusive.
Right.
But it's like, do you get your way more than your partner gets their way? Well, yeah, but I should get my way more than they want to get their way. And that's where it's like, red flag, red flag, red flag. Those are the real danger zones.
Yeah,
exactly.
You just mentioned like because they're not being abusive, the stereotype, maybe even in their own minds they can justify it as well. I'm not hitting her, so what's the problem, or something like that. It's like, well, would that be a way that maybe they can even justify it to themselves? Of, well, like you said, they might think, well, it's supposed to be this way, and I'm not abusing her, I'm not hitting her, so it's fine, right? So that could be another factor playing into it.
Yeah, within and Lundy Bancroft, he wrote a great book, Why Do They Do That? Inside the Minds of Angry and Controlling Men. And I definitely think women can be toxic too. I really, truly do. I believe I believe in this context, talking about men, I try to steer a bit away from the word narcissist because then we kind of get into like this obsessive study of narcissism, which doesn't propel growth in the way I want. But he talked about, I read something recently that he goes, don't call him narcissistic, call him abusive. Call them abusive. Like, just call it what it is. We do all this dance around. You're being really selfish, and you think you can behave badly to keep being selfish.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And if I may, this is where I'd love to introduce the concept of boundaries, because boundaries is such a buzzword
it's coming into now. It's coming into this now. Like, we're finally realizing that we need boundaries.
Yes. Yeah. But I do want to point out that there were 3 little pigs. One had straw boundaries, one had stick boundaries, one had brick boundaries. None of the pigs changed the big bad wolf. Not any, no matter how good the boundaries were. The big bad wolf still did what he did, right? And so, because I think there's also a misconception. Well, if that person's being really selfish and they're doing everything they can to get what they want, it's your job to stand up to them and not run over them and not be a doormat. And that's just a very poor understanding of this dynamic. It's like, victim blaming. Well, Neil, you should have stood up to them. And if you hadn't been such a doormat, they wouldn't be abusive. What?
Yeah.
No. Right. The big bad wolf is still the big bad wolf.
Yeah.
Well, do you think that the big bad wolf can change?
I don't think they do. Whether they can or
do you think they can?
I don't think they want to.
Because we have to go into trauma of their childhood. And, It could be genetic. It could be what you were taught. You know, if they really wanted to, do you think that they could change?
I don't think they really want to. So, I mean, I know I'm not trying to avoid your question. It's just
No.
like,
I understand. Yeah.
You know, when someone, that's why we have the term like hit rock bottom. And so I can tell you story after story after story of where it's like, oh, my husband changed. Well, I'll tell you one. So my husband, she was in such a mess that she tried to kill herself, and her daughters remember her trying to kill herself. Well, then they stay together. They solve the marriage. They fix everything. They change. Fast forward 20 years, this woman is not allowed to pick out her own shoes. She's not allowed to go to the grocery store by herself, and she's not allowed to talk to her children without his supervision. Okay, but he changed. They saved their marriage. They made it work. So the stories that I hear about people changing, if I wait long enough, it's the control changed. The type of control changed. The fact that he's controlling did not change.
Because he doesn't want to.
What? Yeah. What, his wife is a separate person with her own ideas and her own relationship with her kids and her own.
God forbid.
What's so sad in that story is her kids remember her trying to kill herself. They remember her as the deceived one. And it was a situation where, oh, I'm daddy's little girl, because he's seen as the person in power. He's seen as the power in that relationship. And that's where I say to women, I'm like, you have to take back your power. If you, it's tricky when there's violence involved, right? I'm not saying stay in the relationship and stand up to him more. I'm saying get out of the relationship and find your power, so your kids see you as the power player. Yeah. Right? Or at least the equal power player, not. Yeah. Because there's a safety attached to that. Like, we align with the person in power because that makes us feel safe. If dad is going to turn on us and criticize us for defending mom, it's not that mom didn't do the right thing. Yeah. It's that kids to feel safe in their own life. Yeah. It's tricky dynamic. It's not good. It's not good.
Yeah, and you talk about that, right? The dad having his role and the mother having her role, and people standing up or not standing up when they're supposed to. And, you know, there's that old fashioned saying that they say, like, you know, women tend to look for their fathers in their spouses, right? And men tend to look for their mothers or a version of their mother in their spouses. Do you think that's one of the reasons why some people who either get into a toxic relationship or continue staying in one, do they mistake that for like a parental side? Like, oh, yes, they're kind of controlling me, but it's like a parent, it's for my own good. So is that one of the reasons? Is that a common reason, the confusion between, say, parental authority, and they don't see the difference between the two? That no, but yes, you may see it that way, but this is not your parent. It's your spouse. It's your partner. So they're not supposed to be that way. But is that something that a lot of people
again, Neil, that's a fabulous question, because that is a component that is not being talked about in protecting our teens against toxic behavior. So I did a mental health campaign for that school after Emma was killed. And that was one of the things I said, at this point, the people in your life have been your authority figure. You know, your teachers can tell you what to do. Your coaches can tell you what to do. Your parents can tell you what to do. But at some point, this is what relationships are supposed to look like, not this, like powering over. You know, they're supposed to be that equal component. And that's actually one of the most powerful conversations to have with teens, is like, you know, they're not supposed to be act like a parent, right? That is the easiest way, because especially teens do not want to have another parent or another person telling them what to do. So it's a really easy way to crack through that, to say, oh, so you don't want your mom telling you what to do, but you're happy to have your boyfriend telling you what to do. I thought you were like learning to be an independent woman, but you're not. You just got your boyfriend telling you what to do. And I know I'm speaking harshly. I'm trying to cut through
No,
teenage.
no. Yeah.
We got it. Yeah.
Trust me, I have a teenager. Keep going.
Yeah.
I have a teenager. Keep going. You know?
That is the biggest piece of advice. And then playing by the same set of rules, because teens have a innate desire to break rules as is socially appropriate in certain circumstances. And so it's like when you point out that their job is to follow the rules and the other person's job is to set the rules, break the rules, and enforce the rules, and your job is to follow the rules, that's one of the easiest. I know it's a very simple definition, but the word abuse is tricky. Gaslighting is tricky. Narcissism is tricky, you know, but kind of, so they always get the better end of the deal. Is that what I'm getting from you? So your job is to follow the rules and their job is to break the rules. Is that what kind of relationship you're looking for? And they're going to say, no, that's not, it really cuts through the denial. And it's obviously best to teach them when it's not them, like they're friends in a relationship and you're like, what? I thought, why does your boyfriend get to be her parent? Like, that's cool. It's just your partner.
And in the story, I mean, the incident, the boy was quarterback of the high school team. So we all think of quarterbacks as golden boys.
Oh, yeah.
And, everybody wants to make it about like income. Lower income people are the ones that abuse, There's abuse in some of the, richest families in the world.
Yeah. We can all watch. I'm watching, what's that? Oh, what's the show? Succession right now. It's like,
oh my God, is that crazy? Yeah, that is a good show. That is a really good show.
Great. Yeah. I do love that show. And it's also a really great example. There's not that much violence. I think the grandfather hit the grandchild like once or twice, as if that's excusable. I don't mean that to sound like not a big deal, but that's a really good. I am excited to see that our media is starting to portray some different things where you just know that's just really not right. You can kind of see the grandfather always gets to make the rules, break the rules, set the rules, and it's everybody else's job to follow the rules. And if they're not following the rules, he feels that license to do whatever he wants to punish them. It's a perfect example of toxic family dynamics.
Well, that show is about the control of a company, control of money. Hello? You want toxic? Look at people trying to control money. Right?
Yep. No,
now,
absolutely.
Sarah, what is the statistic of women actually getting out of toxic relationships? Is it getting better, do you think?
Oh, gosh. They are getting out, but I'm not happy with the statistics, and I can't name them offhand, but I'm not happy with what happens after. Right. So, before, when women weren't even working, it was really hard to get out of a toxic situation, because it was like, there was a book I read on the Vanderbilts recently, and apparently one of the Vanderbilts got a divorce. He wasn't abusive, but he was having an affair with her best friend. And so she got a divorce, late 1800s. Well, at that time, it was just like, okay, well, if you're a woman, you leave your husband, you lose your kids, you'll never see them again. Like, that was what was happening. Not that. I mean, that was in the humankind. That was not that far away. So I'm very frustrated with the legal system right now. Of course, I'm very frustrated with everything in the process, but I do want to say, okay, like let's see where we came from. Right? It used to be that if a woman said she was leaving, she never saw her kids again, and it's still not anywhere close to where we need to go. But there is some hope, right? The daily wisdom hope.
There's always hope.
Yes, we're moving in. Yeah. We're getting closer into the right direction. So I do think more women are getting out, but there's a different conversation in out and better.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And getting into another toxic relationship without resetting normal or thinking, well, this is a one-off and I don't have to worry about this again, or You know, there's breaking the cycle. There's getting out, and then there's really breaking the cycle. And those are two different conversations. And there's women as I would like to see really creating amazing lives after toxic relationships. But there are some, and it is 100% possible. If you're listening, it is 100% possible.
Listen to this woman. Listen to her.
Wonderful. Just you've got to break those patterns. Don't just assume I'm out and it's all the problems.
Nobody deserves to be hit or even talked down to. You know, I mean, I count myself lucky. I've never been in a toxic relationship. Have you?
Me,
no,
yes.
I've been married 30 years. I've been married 30 years.
Oh, well, that's wonderful.
To a great guy. Yeah. But even prior to that, I never had a toxic relationship, that's
very unusual. Yeah, that's very unusual.
Yeah.
And I had Allison Armstrong on on my podcast, Toxic Person Proof, and she does the relationship stuff with Tony Robbins, right? So she was on stage with Tony Robbins. Okay, so that level of relationship excellence. And I was so happy that when she was on my podcast, her husband had died, and she ended up in a toxic relationship. And she was honest about that. And I was like, gosh, you're a freaking warrior. Like, you could have made excuses and hid that and pretended that didn't happen. And, you know, she wrote a poem that she had read, like trying to pull herself out of that situation. And she didn't stay in it that long. You know, she had a good, healthy foundation. But it's such a testament to who can end up in a toxic relationship. You know, and it's
wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah. And you talk about that, like, you know, about you mentioned the word patterns previously in an answer, and looking for that, and people who end up all over again even after. So how do you reach that point? I know that in your book you talk a great deal about how you were, you know, somebody with rose-colored glasses on before, right? Like, you were like, oh, anybody can change with a little love, with a little caring. Oh, they're not really like that. It's just circumstances. And of course, slowly but surely, you know, you are at the stage you are, very well-informed, intelligent, and spreading this awareness, which is so great and so noble. But how do you strike that balance? Yeah, right?
Here.
How do you strike that balance of becoming more pragmatic and just more aware, but not crossing over that line of becoming just downright pessimistic?
I'm actually incredibly still trusting and still open to meeting new people. So there is a difference in a dog who bites you once and a dog who bites you daily. You talked about the pattern. I just wanted to remind people of that quote in the pattern. And so I believe that the dog will show me who they are. So when a dog comes up, it's kind of neutral. It's like, okay, that could be a nice dog or it could be a bad dog. I know not all dogs are bad. Some dogs do bite people like that. You know, just like we think about dogs, right? But Maya Angelou said, when people tell you who they are, believe them. So I try to avoid assumptions and see actions. And if the dog comes up and licks my hand and, you know, lets me pet its head, I'm going to believe its actions. And if a dog is snarling and growling and whatnot, I'm going to believe its actions. And in people, they may not be so obvious. But, you know, if it seems like something is off, it probably is. And I just believe that with all my heart. I no longer wait to fill in all the blanks.
Wow.
Gosh, right? Because by the time you fill in the blanks, you are sucked in. You're married, you've gone into business with this person, you've let them watch your children, you know, whatever it is, like you're already sucked in. But it's just like, you know, feels like something's off, a little bit weird. And then something else. It feels like something's off, a little bit weird. Okay, well, I believe that if something feels weird, it probably is, right? And I've asked that with people who have cheated too. And I said, you know, how do you know if someone's cheating? And they said, if you think they're cheating, they probably are. I know,
right? I mean, that doesn't come out of nowhere. That just doesn't come out of nowhere. Yeah. I mean, if you have a suspicion, chances are you're on the right track.
And if you have a suspicion that someone's toxic, there's a high chance they are. I try to think of the 3 strikes you're out rule.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's weird. That's weird. That feels like something's off. And I really try to live by that. I'm almost down to 2 strikes now, but I do believe in the word pattern. I do believe in that pattern and giving people second chances. I do. I do. Like, it's like, I am open to you showing me who you are. But if you show me and there are concerns, I don't feel a bit bad about taking a step back and shutting the door and protecting myself, or at least putting distance.
Right.
Yeah. Well, you know, we also need to teach our daughters self-esteem because parenting is finally changing. Thank God. And we are listening to our children more. Like, when a child has a fit, they're having a fit for a reason because they can't verbally tell you what is wrong. So, you know, if you hit them, they're just going to cry more. You need to figure out what that is. And we don't need to tell our daughters they're beautiful as much as we need to tell them they're smart and capable, you know? So I think it all goes back to, you know.
My son said the most interesting statement. He said, if he's downing on his sister, my kids are still young. He said, well, if Natalie got a divorce, that'd be terrible for your business. He was like talking about his sister, and he's like, oh, well, if she got a divorce, that'd be terrible for your business. If she ended up with a toxic person, that'd be terrible for your business. And I said, no, it wouldn't. No, if she ended up getting out of a relationship that she should have, that would be great. Not for my business, but just great in general. I mean, sure.
I know. I mean, you'd rather have your daughter safe than
my gosh.
business.
And for her to learn the tools of rebound, for her to learn the tools of, like, lots of wonderful people have gotten it. I don't even say gotten themselves in situations. Toxic people are good at their game. They're just really good at their game.
I like that. They're good at their game.
Yeah.
That is a statement that needs to be put out there, people. A toxic person.
And I want, like, think about Bill Cosby and how we just loved him. I mean, I grew up loving Bill Cosby, and then, you know, but we don't beat people up and say, gosh, you were fooled by Bill Cosby. Gosh, you have low self-esteem that you were fooled by Bill Cosby, you know. But then if someone's in a romantic relationship, there's just like criticism or something went wrong, rather than, wow, toxic people are really good manipulators. And it twists the conversation just a bit, you know, the Bernie Madoff stuff, you know, the people at Epstein, you know, I mean, all these situations, like, there's a Hitler. There's a long history of people that at one point people thought they were one way, and then we found out they were a different way. And that's all toxic people are. That's all it is. And if we start saying, oh, yeah, sometimes people, you know, have a mask on, you don't know who they are, and then once you figure out who they are, if it's bad, you're free to protect yourself. Like, oh, I'm not stupid.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
And I'm not a victim. I mean, the victim word's tricky because people are victims, but there's a difference in feeling broken the rest of your life as a victim and saying, oh, at one point in my life I was a victim of this, but I no longer appear that way. I no longer appear that way.
Well, didn't the Cosby thing break your heart? Because I have a friend who's a sheriff, and one time, a long time ago, Bill Cosby came into town to do a show. And my friend, he's a sergeant, and he tried to tell Bill Cosby, great show, Mr. Cosby. Bill Cosby didn't even look at him. He picked up his newspaper and he did this to cut my friend off. And he said, you know, as a sheriff, that did bells in my head.
Okay, so that's the concept of that's weird. When I'm talking about the 3 strikes you're out, that's a perfect example of that. Because people say, what's a list of red flags? To make every list of every possible situation is just really impossible. But that the sense that he had of like, most people wouldn't do that. Most people wouldn't be socially appropriate.
Especially America's dad.
Oh, I know. I know. It was heartbreaking, but I love that you brought up that example, because that's the kind of stuff, maybe someone did that. Maybe he did that to the producer of the Cosby Show years ago. Maybe he did that to who knows how many people. And if people started saying, oh, that's weird, something's off, rather than, well, but he's funny. Well, but he seems like a nice guy. Well, that's where we start talking ourselves out of what we see.
Yeah.
Wow.
Can you, okay, this book is like a must read, people. Seriously, I haven't gotten all the way through it, but it's definitely going to finish it here. But what made you write it? I mean, where did you get that jewel? That I'm going to get this woman's story out, or this girl's story out, because we need to know.
I am obsessed with changing the language around abuse. Even like where it's like, okay, the domestic violence is stage 4, or the big bad wolf story, or playing by the same set of rules, or they're good at their game. Not to be like sound bitey, but I have spent years trying to think, how can I cut through the noise where something clicks? And it's like, oh, that's simple, right? Because to ask most people to explain gaslighting is very confusing. These terms are big and broad and confusing. And to say, well, toxic people are good at their game, or, just because good boundaries protect pigs, they don't change wolves. People usually go, oh, I know what you're talking about. I know what you're saying there. So I am just obsessed. I coach women through this process and building a great life after a toxic relationship. But I am just completely obsessed with the language around it and simplifying the language to make it a really difficult subject easier to understand.
Well, and a toxic relationship could be between friends, between, mother and child, father and child, child and child. It's not just married people or boyfriend and girlfriend.
And
right?
What a gift. What a gift when we start saying, oh, yeah, toxic people exist and we know them. And I had a toxic friend, or I had a toxic coworker. We put toxic romantic relationships in this terrible category of stupidity. And it's like, well, did everybody who was fooled by Bill Cosby, do we just consider them stupid? Because I need to raise my hand. I was fooled by Bill Cosby,
I was sold.
Yeah, and so when we start saying, oh, toxic people are good at their game, we really take a lot of the hindrances about leaving a toxic romantic relationship or telling people the truth. And that sense of, oh, I'm just so stupid. I can't believe I married this person. I can't believe I dated this person. It's like, well, do we chastise the people who believed in Epstein? I mean, okay, Bill Clinton, are you stupid? Like, Bill Clinton is obviously stupid because he was fooled by Epstein. Well, it's crazy. Like, he's not stupid, and it really takes some of the sting out, which I'm also quite passionate about. But I do want to call it a toxic encounter, because I did want to keep it a toxic person encounter rather than the subcategory of romantic relationships. There's like these books who love too much, codependency, women who love psychopaths, and they're great books. I actually am friends with some of the authors, but I wanted this to be a category more broad that also gave to if it's a toxic romantic relationship like Emma.
Wow, that's great.
Yeah.
So you have a podcast.
I do have a podcast.
Tell us about it. Where can we find it? I watch some on YouTube, so I know you're on YouTube.
I am, yes. Toxic Person Proof is the name of my podcast.
I love that name.
Thank you.
I love that name.
And I believe in it.
Absolutely. I mean, you are starting a conversation we needed to have years ago. Probably since any time. Probably since the first person that ever stepped on this land.
Well, even if going back to the story of Adam and Eve, Cain killed his brother, or which one killed him? But one of the brothers killed each other. And it's a sibling relationship. Pretty easy to define it as toxic.
I think I put that down as pretty much toxic.
It's usually a bad idea if you kill your brother. Frowned upon.
So when is your podcast, sweetie?
Oh gosh, we release 3 podcasts a week, so it is just.
Oh my gosh, we only released 1, and I'm exhausted.
I'm so passionate about it. I love the conversations. This week I with a West Point graduate about decision-making skills and problem solving, and a professional organizer about getting your outside life to match your internal life, or internal life to match your outside life. Just such a broad range of topics about really that building of life after. And it's made for someone who has had a toxic person encounter and wants to take back their thinking, get their life back to be the best it can be, and move forward.
Wow, I'm excited. And you can just, I'll find it on all the normal.
You can find it everywhere. If you Google toxic person proof, you're going to see me everywhere. Yeah, Spotify.
We'll share the links in the description when this episode comes out.
Absolutely. Because like I said, this is a conversation that we needed to have a long time ago. And I commend you for really bringing it out into the forefront. And like I said, I haven't gotten through your book, but it's absolutely fantastic. You can tell by that bestseller thing. Now you have, after your name, you have MS, Master of Science. You have a Master's in Science?
Yes, so I actually have a Master's in Library Science, which is so funny.
Wow.
But that's where I am just an obsessive researcher, right? Which is kind of funny in the life coach world, but people are like, you remember everything you read, and you can quote people like everything, like your book is like, your head is like this encyclopedia that you just like pull out of the shelf, like, okay, well, this author you've heard.
So you have a photographic memory.
I don't think I have a photographic memory, but I have a very significantly high functioning memory. And I grew up playing the piano, so I was always memorizing.
Concentration, yeah.
Memorizing Beethoven sonatas, memorizing all this stuff. And when I was in college, I worked for a pharmacy, and they were like, you should be a pharmacist. You have such a good memory. And so it's funny how that's played out in my life now, because a lot of times when people are coaching me for answers, it's like I pull out the encyclopedia and I'll say, well, this person says this and this person says this. I kind of lean in the middle on this or whatever. But it's that's where that came from. It's such an odd it's an odd skill that has just served me and my ladies very well.
That is awesome.
Absolutely.
Now you're a life coach.
Yes.
So can people find you online, and do you do life coaching online?
Yeah, so I really love to work with high achieving women who are looking to take the strengths that they have developed in other areas of their life, running an organization, running a charity, running their kids around. I don't care what it is, but having that sense of like what has been successful in other areas of your life, and how do we apply that to your healing journey? Because there's so many people talking about codependency, or they just come like, oh, you're just broken and something was so wrong with you and that you ended up in a toxic relationship. And I'm like, no, what's right with you? There's something so right with you. How do we take that and start applying it to the areas of your life that you don't feel as strong in, such as dating, parenting after divorce, that type of situation? So absolutely, you can check out my website at sarah.kramsey.com, or join my Facebook group, Finding Love and Success After a Toxic.
Oh, I love that. Neil has all this written down, and it's going all over the description. And you have been a delight to have on. You really have. I mean, I just commend you for what you're doing.
Thank you.
I mean, you started a conversation.
I love it. And my next conversation hit is going to be on frameworks for decision making and problem solving. So
would you come back?
I'll come back. Yeah, no, I'll come back when my next book's out. After a toxic
calendar out, Neil.
If someone has been like stuck in gaslighting or, get abuse, it's the brain scramble. So, and plenty of us are in brain scrambles that haven't been in toxic relationships. So how do you make decisions?
Can I call you later and have you tell me my children's names? Because daily I'm calling them their siblings' names. So, I have brain scramble. I am the perfect example of brain scramble. So,
and just taking when you kind of start to talk to people about their decision making, what their framework and strategies are for making decisions or problem solving, people are kind of like, what? But I'm like, what do you think the upgrade of your life could be if you felt like a really confident decision maker and problem solver? And people are like, whoa.
Exactly.
Yes. So after 4 years of this work with, I think what people would agree is working with one of the most difficult populations in decision making and problem solving, people whose brains are really scrambled from trauma and PTSD, getting them, they call me the success fairy because, just today, people who worked with me and they're like, I got a promotion, I got offered this job, I got this, I got that. Well, yeah, we're taking and applying them to other areas of your life and teaching you executive problem solving skills and showing up as your best self. So that's mine. I'm not moving away from the toxic person proof, but what I've learned from this population, I also want to broaden.
But giving women the keys to changing their life and becoming a different person, better person. There's a special place in heaven for you, girl. I'm telling you.
Thank you. You can tell the pastors who said that I was putting Jesus on the cross with a cat of nine tails for getting a divorce. So they basically told me I personally was sending Jesus to hell. I always laugh at people when people say that. Oh, you're just like God's gift. I was like, oh, if you knew, if only you knew.
I love it.
I'm a terrible person.
And you're absolutely adorable. So, the rules have changed. The rules have changed. We need to get out of the 16, 15, 1400s or whatever. And, the world is changing. So, we got to move with the times. So if divorce was what you needed, divorce is what you needed.
Well, and times have changed and bullying is no longer acceptable. Bullying has been acceptable. Think about the gladiators, like putting people killed for sport. We have been a society of humankind that has loved bullying. And I really hope that's really what toxic relationships and abusive, behavior is about, is that excuses for bullying. So I'm very strongly hoping we're moving away from that. And I think we are.
I think we are. Right, Neil?
Yeah. There's hope.
Well, kiddo, again, thank you. And I really do believe that you have started a conversation that we've needed to have for a long time. I'm holding you to coming back on the show.
Oh, me too.
And follow her.
Yes, at Bounce Back Better on Instagram. And then
Bounce Back Better.
Bounce back, yes, Ramsey bounce back. But if you search toxic person proof, you're gonna come up.
There. It's all there. Yeah.
Well, thank you, Sarah. You have just brightened my day with this conversation. So, all the best to you, sweetie.
Thank you.
And we'll see you after your next book comes out.
Thank you.
Okay.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone, for watching today. And a special thank you for Sarah for coming on.
Be sure to follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at all the links in the description. And don't forget to hit like on this video and subscribe to this channel so you never miss an episode. And if you want to show us a little extra love, we also have a link for donations. Thank you, everyone, once again, and we will see you right here next week at 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time.
Bye.